I think one of the hardest things about not being cis, people just assume that I'm choosing to be this way or, you know. And I'm like, yes, I'm actively choosing to make my life harder. Thank you very much. Like, why would I want to sit here and constantly be confused about who I am? That is not fun.
Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. We get curious about all things gender, sex, and sexuality, as well as relationships, feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. If you like what we do and want to support this podcast, you can become a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender, as in FIFTY. You can also buy us a coffee or make a donation. Links are on the website. You can now register your interest for our upcoming allyship course. Go to 50shadesofgender.com/allyship-course or navigate to the course page via the website menu to be notified when it goes live. Now, join us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance, and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I am a queer woman, and my pronouns are she and they. In this episode, I have a conversation with FINLEY BRAND. FINLEY's pronouns are they and them, and they are transgender, non-binary, agender, and a demigirl. They are also autistic, polyamorous, and kinky. Find out what that means to FINLEY in this episode. We also talk about the connection between facets of identity, including gender, neurodivergence, polyamory, and kink, feeling safe to be authentic, reclaiming childhood and nurturing the inner child, misconceptions about kink and sex work, body appreciation and recovering from an eating disorder, and trying to function in a society that's constructed for people who are not disabled. To clarify some terminology that is used in the episode, AFAB is assigned female at birth. It was recorded on the 18th of February 2023. Now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome. What's your name?
Hi, my name is FINLEY BRAND, and my pronouns are they, them, and periodically she, her.
Nice one. Welcome, FINLEY. The labels you gave me were transgender, non-binary, agender, and demigirl. So, I would love to know more about each one of those and what it means to you to be those things. So, where do you want to start?
Yeah, of course. Well, it sounds like a mouthful, right? It's usually when someone asks, I'm just like, oh, I'm non-binary, because that's the quickest, easiest way to just describe myself to other people. So that's kind of like my identifier, I guess, in conversation. But starting with, I'll go down the list. So starting with transgender, I do not identify with the gender I was assigned at birth, which was female. I have never felt female. It's so complicated. So I'll explain a little more. But I was always very confused about gender growing up. So transgender, I just don't identify with the gender I was assigned at birth. Non-binary, I am neither exclusively female nor male. That's kind of my definition of non-binary. Agender for me is basically the lack of feeling gender. Kind of like I don't experience gender in a way. And I've actually been considering adding a label. I don't know if you've heard of Autigender. Is that a term you're
Yeah.
familiar with?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that because we'll get to other labels as well. But you mentioned like you're autistic as well, and I've noticed that there is something about, especially in neurodivergent people, that they can be a bit like, I just don't get it. Gender, what is gender? What is it? What? And I have had someone on the podcast who used the label Autigender. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
feel
that'd be
like
really
the more I
interesting.
think about it, that's quite an accurate label for me. I'll get more into it later, but with being autistic, sometimes social constructs are really hard to comprehend and understand. For
Mm.
example, I don't understand money. It makes no sense to me. I don't get it. Therefore, I am always broke. But my wife loves that one.
Yeah.
um, but gender is just one of those concepts I have never understood. It's like,
Mm.
to me, it feels like, I think, like, people who claim a gender are playing a game almost.
Mm.
Like they're acting a role play kind of thing.
Mm.
Cause for me, I'm just like, I'm just a human. Like, I don't get it. I don't
Yeah. Why do I
understand.
have to pick one of the two? Yeah.
Right. Well, it just doesn't make sense. It's never made sense to me, even as a kid.
Mm.
But actually, so the fascinating thing in that brings me to demigirl,
Mhm.
which is a newer label I'm exploring. And kind of what happened with that is I live in the US, and when Roe v. Wade was turned over, I started to heavily identify with women. I started to see the power in what it means to be a woman and the atrocities that women have gone through as a gender and as a group. And I started to really see power in womanhood. And so I kind of, it's not that I feel like I'm a female or I feel like I'm a woman, but I kind of want to align myself with that energy, that power, because I am AFAB. It just feels like women are still kind of my people in a way, and I feel very protective over autonomy for women.
Mhm.
And it's been a very interesting experience for me, exploring kind of what opening myself back up to femininity and womanhood could look like, even though
Interesting.
I don't
Mhm.
necessarily claim I'm a woman. It's just kind of like that alignment, I guess.
Mm. It's like, I guess, maybe an affinity of sorts. And also, I assume, because of maybe your upbringing, were you socialized as a woman until you learned to, like, I guess, or got the freedom to, or the awareness maybe to self identify in that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely an affinity for sure. In
Mm.
terms of how I was raised, it was actually very interesting, and this
Mhm.
plays into my gender story as well, so I'd love to talk about it.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So growing up, I was obviously raised, quote unquote, as a female, but my parents were always very open about me expressing how I wanted to through clothing. I grew up with two older brothers, and I would always like to wear their hand me downs. I would always love to wear their clothing. And, you know, I, I hate this term, but for lack of a better term, I was a tom girl or tomboy. What's the tomboy? I was a tomboy.
It's tomboy. It's interesting, isn't it? I like that you just said tomgirl. That's great. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I know nothing. Um, but
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, I was kind of a tomboy, but I still enjoyed like cutesy things. And I grew up with like my, not my immediate family. Like my mom was really cool about everything. My dad was kind of like whatever, but like my aunts and uncles and everyone, and my grandpa and everyone were actually really sexist against women. There was a significant culture of sexism in my family. For example, there was a yearly camping trip that the boys would go on. And every year I cried and cried and cried because I wanted to go camping. And I wasn't allowed to because I had breasts and a vagina.
It's kind of crazy if you think about it, isn't it? It makes no sense. Not
Right.
at all. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, really early on, it just started to be beaten into me that not that being female is bad, but that I just don't have this same level of power or same level of meaningfulness because I'm a woman or whatever, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mm.
that plays into my demigirl title now, reclaiming that power that I grew up being basically told I don't have. And, like, for example, also, like, my grandfather would take my brothers to shooting ranges and gun shows and all these other types of things, and, like, I always wanted to go, and being left out because of my gender or assumed gender was excruciatingly painful in my childhood, and that really, really affected me. So I have a weird, interesting history with gender. So even coming back to the idea of demigirl, it's kind of reclaiming my childhood too.
Wow. Yeah. Say more about that, if you like. I'm curious.
Yeah, and like I said, just adopting this idea that being feminine, being a woman, having tits and a vagina equals power and strength. And it does not mean I am less than. It does not mean I am weak. It does not mean I don't have autonomy. There's power in it. And I just think it's so essential to who I'm becoming as I age. I'm in my 30s, but I'm still growing. Everyone always is, and I'm changing every day. And I think the more I look at my history of gender and where I want to be, it's kind of all coming together now a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
I think I started that story for another reason. I don't remember. I feel like I went off topic there.
Just to go down some rabbit holes. It's all good. It's all good. We can find
Yeah,
other
no, I
ones.
just do
Yeah.
that.
I know what you mean. Like, if ever I'm having a conversation like this with someone, I'll be like, they ask me a question, and then I just go off on a tangent, and I'm like, sorry, what was the question? It's
Yeah.
just every time. I just go somewhere random, like seemingly random, but there's a journey, you know? Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
journey, and it
Yeah.
it was also relative, I guess. But I don't remember the question.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure. Oh, you talked about the experience of being a demigirl or the label demigirl and how it helped you reclaim your childhood. I think those were the
Oh,
words you
yes,
used.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I went there.
Yeah. Awesome. See, success. um, yeah. So, some other things. Let me see. Yeah, you mentioned being autistic just now. You also told me you're polyamorous and kinky. Do you
Yes.
feel like, and like with the Autigender in particular, maybe, do you feel like it all, or not maybe in particular, but like, I think I always feel like any label that I adopt in a happy way that I choose to adopt for myself that feels good and empowering to me, I feel like they're all just facets of my identity. So in a way, they're separate things, but also they're really inextricably linked, aren't they? So do you feel like your gender and your neurodivergence and how you, I guess, practice relationships and the kinky side of you as well? Do you feel like it's all connected, or do you feel like they're very much separate things? How do you see that?
That's a really interesting question. Wow, okay. No, I love that. I haven't thought about it that way, but when you said it, I was like, "Oh, yeah. It's all connected." It's so connected because, well, like, obviously with being autistic, I do feel like at this point that I have Autigender. So that's autism related to gender, and then I feel like my autism also relates to being polyamorous because, again, monogamy is a social construct. And I guess I never understood the need to limit my love and limit my experiences with people. I mean, for a while I did. I played the game. I played monogamy. I was engaged to a man in a monogamous relationship when I thought I was a woman. It's a fun bit of my 20s. Um,
Yeah.
I don't want to relive it, but he's actually a really good guy. I still text him every 6 months or so. I do feel like those things are related. Like I was realizing that I wasn't happy in monogamy because I wasn't feeling like I could express myself and explore what I felt I needed to explore. And I was putting these limits on myself just like I was putting limits on myself when I thought I was just a female, you know, and I guess suppressing my needs and not letting myself explore them. So that's definitely related to being polyamorous too, and the autism and polyamory, and I guess it also plays into sexual orientation as well.
Yeah. You see, that makes sense in a way, because maybe when you were in this monogamous dynamic, I guess you were also like you said, you were kind of seen as the woman in the relationship, from a very binary social perspective, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I guess it was multi-layered how you felt it didn't fit. So when you're in this monogamous dynamic, do you feel like you were also, I guess, seen as the woman? So that didn't fit, like in your identity. Did you feel like you weren't seen as who you are, as well as you didn't want to restrict or limit yourself? I'm sure your former partner was, a good guy and all that stuff. But it's like we're all conditioned in these things, aren't we? Like we're very mono cis het
Yeah.
socialized, So yeah, I wondered how that links. I could see that linking together. I wondered how you experienced that as well.
Yeah, at the time, I actually had not come out to myself or anyone else about my gender. I
Okay.
did think I was a woman,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew I wasn't. Like there was this inherent knowing that I wasn't. I was just playing woman. I was playing this game where I am woman. Um, it wasn't until so I ended the engagement when I was 23, essentially because I didn't wanna get married before I had ever had a female partner. I had never had a girlfriend up until then, and not for lack of trying, um, I just yeah, I always liked women and everything. I just wasn't really surrounded by the right people to find someone to date, I guess. I was like, "There's no way I'm getting married before I have a girlfriend. I need to explore the rest of who I am before I commit to a man." So that's actually a big part of what ended our marriage, other than that his family hated me. They thought I was the spawn of Satan and whatever. They were awful.
Wow.
But at the time, yeah, I was under the impression that I was a woman because that's the option I had. When I was around 23, like around the time that I ended the relationship, around 24, I started to explore the idea of gender a lot more seriously. A little earlier in my 20s, around like 21, 22, I had come across the idea of gender fluid, and that started to sound like, okay, maybe I can relate with that. And then it wasn't until I was about like, I think I was 25. I'll have to ask Carrots actually. When I was around 25 is when I discovered the word agender, and I joined the group on Facebook that was an agender
Mm-hmm.
support group, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yep, this is it." So while I was with my ex, I still didn't know my gender identity. So it's interesting. I don't know.
Mm. Yeah, so it all
It's weird
developed
looking
in
back,
your,
almost surreal.
yeah, I bet. So it kind of developed in your 20s. So you found agender. Was that the one you found first?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess demigirl and autigender are sort of more the latest ones. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Mm. Yeah. What a journey, right?
Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
quite a journey.
I'd say.
Um, and
Yeah.
actually, if I go back to the idea of linking my identities and my labels, I guess, my gender also plays into being kinky, and I talked about this on the Transaction podcast. And basically, I engage in a few different forms of kink play. I engage in age play, pet play, rope or shibari, whatever you want to call it. Billion names for it. impact play, a whole bunch of fun things. But the cool thing about it is the way that it leaks to gender is that in the role play type of dynamics, so in age play or pet play, you can adapt whatever identity you want to adapt. And regardless of gender or species or age or, so in pet play, I started to explore what being feminine is like again.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
it's been this really cool journey because, you know, when I first explored being agender, I ran from the hills from anything feminine. I wanted nothing to do with anything feminine. I was like actively trying to push against all of it. And so in pet play, it's been a safe forum for me to kind of explore femininity again and what that means for myself in a safe environment.
Wow. So what does that look like? Trying to get an idea of that in my head. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. So essentially in pet play, it's one or more consenting adults. I always like to emphasize
Important.
consenting adults, humans acting with animalistic characteristics. So my pet, my character is Neo, Neo, and Neo is a combination animal. So Neo is a cat, a lemon shark, a fairy, and a dragon. Um, so Neo's a little cutie. And Neo is feminine. Neo has she they pronouns, and I've been able to explore this idea of feeling cutesy and girly and just this idea of being feminine and what it means through role play of a kitty shark fairy dragon. um
Yeah. Mm.
and my wife actually, she's my madam, or my handler in pet play, and she also role plays as a kitty, but she's a kitty wolf dragon.
Wow.
Um, and her name is Madame Marie. And so she kind of, guides me through this process of exploring what it all means and being, you know, in this dynamic as a feminine entity and exploring that through cute little activities and fun things and then some naughty things. And one thing I always like to emphasize about kink is kink does not equal sex. It does not.
Hmm.
Kink equals explorations in playful environments. Sometimes they can be naughty, sometimes they're not naughty, sometimes it's just fun. I know a lot of asexual people who engage in kink, and it yeah, it's interesting. I always try and emphasize that. So anyway, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm ranting now and going nowhere. So
No, you're
I'll
fine.
pause.
No. No, but that is such an important thing to, I think, emphasize, because I think a lot of people think kink and BDSM, it's all just, perverted. I don't know. People have
Yeah,
such
it's all
assumptions
naughty, it's
about
all
it.
sex, it's all
Yeah. Yeah.
raunchy. It's not. The
Hmm.
reality is it's not. For me, it's mostly psychological more than anything.
Hmm. Yeah, I can imagine it being very therapeutic and healing in ways. I think I talked to Harris
Absolutely.
about that as well, because as I mentioned to you earlier, I recorded Harris's previous episode, only 2 days before we're having this conversation, so it was quite
Yeah,
close together. Yeah, 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 very therapeutic and healing, you know?
absolutely. It definitely is a form of therapy for me. In all senses, different types of play provide different types of therapeutic healing. Age play, for example, when I role play as a child. I'm experiencing being young again through a positive lens that is safe and nurturing and free from stress and worry. And that's not how my actual childhood was. My childhood was it was rough. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. And so being able to explore that as an adult in a safe environment, it's very healing. It's very like nurturing your inner child, and people talk about that all the time, but I think it gets overlooked that age play is a type of doing that.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, really. Yeah. So, do you feel like, hmm, I mean, where do you think your journey is headed? If you do, you have any idea? Like, you might, as you just said, the term autigender is something you're adopting. I guess that's
Yeah.
a newish one, isn't it? So, yeah, do you expect to maybe release other labels or adopt more labels? I mean, life's a journey, isn't it? So how could it not? But I think some people feel fairly set in where they are and how they feel, whereas others are more fluid in that way, I suppose.
I think as I'm aging, aging, I'm in my 30s. I think as I'm growing older, I don't know if I'd say aging, although my body would. Um, I feel like I'm becoming an old man already. But as I'm aging, as I'm growing older, I do feel like I'm more open to the idea of fluidity with labels. I think, when I was originally exploring my gender identity and everything, I think I was a lot more rigid about it because I was trying to validate myself. And now, as I'm learning more about myself and growing, I feel like I'm more open to the idea that things are fluid, things fluctuate and change and maybe go a little this way, but then come back that way. Or, maybe they change a little bit in that direction, and that's okay. And it's just kind of being open to letting yourself, I guess, notice those things within yourself and letting yourself explore them. And like I said, that's where kink comes in a great ways, letting me explore those different ideas.
Yeah, I love that. So, what do you wish people, mostly cis people, I suppose, what do you wish people knew about gender? Random wildcard question.
I guess first and foremost is, people have this misconception that it's a choice. That's, I think, one of the hardest things about not being cis. People just assume that I'm choosing to be this way, or you know. And I'm like, yes, I'm actively choosing to make my life harder. Thank you very much. Like, why would I want to sit here and constantly be confused about who I am? That is not fun. Um, but I think, this misconception that it's a choice. It's not a choice. It's really not. It's everyone's brain responds differently to different ideas. And I think especially with neurodivergence, with being autistic, like my brain just works differently. And so it just, I let my brain do what it does. So it's not a choice. The other thing is we're not scary. We're not this ominous, weird, like outer space entity. Like we're just people trying to be happy with who we are. And we're just trying to engage in life in a way that's authentic for us. And I think the way that society has been, I guess, kind of built up and civilization has built up is that it doesn't allow for us to do that safely. It doesn't feel safe to be genuine and authentic with who we are all the time. I'm starting a new job on Monday, and every time I start a new job, I have to decide, am I going to be out? Am I going to use my pronouns? Am I going to disclose I'm autistic? Am I going to be authentic? Or am I going to have to hide who I am and go through trauma because of it? Because society as a whole is not open to letting people be themselves. There's this expectation that you have to fit a certain mold, and most people don't fit that mold. So that's what I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, that's so true. Interestingly, the person I spoke to who was Autigender is also polyamorous, and they said they can't, they can be discriminated against in the workplace. Like they could potentially, or their partner could be fired, and they wouldn't have a leg to stand on. They couldn't do anything about it. Yeah, that just seems wild to me. Yeah, and I can't imagine that as such. So that shows my privilege, obviously. But like, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
I can't believe that is even a thing. You know?
Being polyamorous openly can be dangerous, at least in the US. And especially in California, there's it's called at will employment. So they can fire you at any time for any reason.
Interesting.
Polyamorous people do not have protections. We don't. There's I forget the exact word, but usually a lot of jobs out here have like a clause of like what's I can't even think of the word, like a good human clause or something, like I will not be a disgrace to my job. And a lot of people see polyamory as being disgraceful.
Wow.
And the way that
Mm,
you represent yourself, you're representing their brand consistently. Like that's how people see you out here. And so if you it's really complicated and it does feel unsafe. In jobs, I tend to slowly disclose as I kind of decipher who might be safe and who is not safe. But
yeah, that makes
it's
sense.
at will employment is dangerous and scary. You don't have protections unless you're in a union.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine why you'd want to, play it safe and be careful and take your time with that. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting though, starting a new job, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, what is your job about?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about my new job. Well, I guess if we have a moment, I'll talk a little bit about my recent history. I was working towards becoming a teacher, an English teacher for high school, and I came across a lot of discrimination actually, and a lot of abuse for being autistic, for being disabled. Education was my passion. It was my career. It was everything I lived for a very long time. And last year in 2022, it all fell apart. And since then, I've been utterly destroyed and also kind of finding this way to reinvent myself. And so, I dug deep down and I was like, okay, what's important to me? Other than making money, obviously, but what's important to me? And what it came down to was advocating and working with my communities that I belong to, whether it be LGBT, whether it be the kink community, polyamory community, or the disabled community. And I found this job and I'm just so excited to start it. So I will be working with, I'll be working at a group home for women with disabilities that are intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's 4 women who live in the home, and basically I'll be a one-on-one with them. They kind of rotate you through the different women so you get to know everybody, and so I'll be a one-on-one with people who need support, and being able to provide that for someone in my community is one of the most beautiful things in the world to me. And I'm
Mm,
so excited to start this job. I start
yeah.
Monday and today is Saturday, so I'm getting very
Yeah.
excited.
I bet. Yeah.
Um
That sounds really rewarding. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, my wife and I, we have some business ventures actually that we're looking forward to once we settle down more. We just moved about 3 weeks ago, so we're
Mm.
still settling in, but we have some business plans. She's an artist, and so we are going to monetize her art,
Hmm.
and create a store and sell merchandise and stuff and everything, with her art on it. And then we're actually also talking about going into sex work, which is another thing that's completely seen the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So, what is people's most what is the most common misconception about sex work that you've found?
that it's dirty, that it's dirty, that it's for people who don't have other paths in life. It's for drug addicts. It's for, you know,
Mm.
there's so many misconceptions about sex work.
Hmm.
I previously was a sex worker, and
Okay.
I want to get back to that world. I loved it.
Yeah. What
Specifically, I
does
was a
that
cam
involve for
model,
you? Ah, yeah, yeah. So,
and
what
that's
do you
what we
love
want to
about it?
do.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Cool.
sorry, I talked over you.
That's all right. That's like I was trying to listen and talk at the same time, which I never succeed at. So, yeah, I was curious about you said you've done it before and do you want to get back to it the same as you've done before, and also like yeah, what did you love about it and what was it about, what did you do?
Yeah, so essentially, when I was a cam model, it's over the internet, so it's physically safe versus working at a club or something like that, or working with people in person in sex work. That tends to be a lot more dangerous, a lot more risky. And so yeah, cam work. Basically, I was signed up on a couple websites, and you create like a profile. And the way that the websites work is there's like a token system. So people basically exchange money for tokens, and then they tip you in tokens, and that's how you get paid. And basically, like, how it was working with the sites I was on was you're just on camera and looking cute and talking with people, and it was a lot more social engagement than people realize. It wasn't just naked bodies and sex. It was
Hmm.
making people feel wanted, making people feel like they matter.
Mm.
um and I think people don't really see that side of sex work, the psychological side of it. And I also received those same things from people, my fans, my followers. I felt validation from them. I felt wanted. It was a good feeling. It was an addicting feeling. And then, of
Mm.
course, there's, the naughty side. And I'm kind of an exhibitionist. So I'm like, yeah, look at my titties. Like, let me touch my vagina. Like, yes, this is great. And I'm making money for it. So
Brilliant, right?
yeah, and it's fun. I would do some different things on cam. So like basically you have this like general chat room where you're
Hmm.
on video, and then people do this. And then if you get a certain amount of tips, you can do like a private club show, which is where you do the more naughty stuff.
Right.
But I would like put music on and dance, or like just chat with people, and it's just so much fun.
That's
And my
great.
wife and I are gonna do that together now, which you're gonna make so much more money doing it as a couple,
Really, is
especially
that a thing? Ah.
two assumed women.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that sounds kind of like with the kink. It sounds like it has very much a therapeutic and very healing side to it.
yeah.
You know that people don't understand, and obviously sometimes don't want to understand. I don't want to see about it. They wouldn't want to see the good in something like that, but they should.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's a lot of judgment and misconceptions about sex work too. And I'm sure I could go on and on about it, but I think it's a beautiful thing. And I wish more people were open to, I guess, learning about it instead of making assumptions about it?
Totally, yeah. Because it's so easy to dismiss, isn't it? Like the, you know, but people don't even, yeah, they don't even get educated or even look into it in
Yeah.
ways. Because I think that they're maybe afraid of it or something. And I think in a maybe not in a similar way, but it makes me think about what about exploring your gender? People are like, no, I'm not going there. But it's like, you might just figure out you're cis, what is the harm in that? Or
Right. Why
you
is it
might
so
figure
scary
out,
to learn who you are?
yeah, right. So that's such a thing, I find. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking too, I've had one other person on the podcast who talked about sex work. I would love to talk to more sex workers really and get like more of a diverse perspective on it when it comes to gender
Yeah.
as well as sex work,
Well, if
obviously.
you ever want to talk to me again,
Yeah.
I'm happy to do an episode just on sex work, but I feel like I could talk for hours about it. So,
Amazing. Yeah, I really love it. The other person was a dominatrix, and Devi Irony, their name is, and non-binary as well. And had a really interesting conversation with them about, also their experience of their body, and they were saying how their breasts were really big, but they didn't see it as a gender marker, so they were happy with them. They didn't feel like they wanted to change anything about that and stuff like that. Yeah, that was really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I've
So,
thought about
yeah.
getting into pro doming, but unfortunately for me, the majority of the clientele for pro dom are cis men, and that's just something I'm not comfortable with. It's very hard to find in kink in general, honestly, like it's very hard to find people who align with LGBT in a safe way. There's a lot of cis men,
Yeah, who
and
obviously like
it's hard to find your
fetishize
people in
all
that
the
community.
yeah, I bet. And I think there's probably a lot of fetishizing of, I don't know, many marginalized groups and stuff, isn't there? I assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. One question that just came up in me when it's about the sex work and like with your experience of gender in that, yeah, how comfortable are you with your body, in your body, showing your body? I mean, you just said you're a bit of an exhibitionist, so I guess quite. But I don't know if you had any more thoughts related to that and gender.
Yeah, that's been an interesting journey for me too, I think, because when I was first exploring my gender, I did have some, body dysphoria. And I bought a breast binder, and there were other considerations I had. I did have some bottom dysphoria, and I think as time went on, I started to not just accept my, body parts, but also appreciate them. And it's also intertwined because I am recovered from an eating disorder as well, and that has a lot to do with my body as well. Um,
Hmm.
because you know,
That's amazing.
um,
Like, congratulations, by the way. Yeah, that's
thank you.
amazing that you've,
You know
yeah,
what? Here's the thing. I've been recovered for maybe 2 years, but I
wow.
still have slip ups, and it happens, and
Hmm.
it's a hard life.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
but that's where like dance really helped me too. Is when I was getting into pole dance, just for fun, not for performance or anything. Um, when I was getting into pole dance, I started doing that once I was fully recovered, and that started a beautiful journey with myself and my body acceptance.
wow.
Um, and I just started to adore every part of my body and how I would, you know, use it in this expressive movement that was just so powerful and so beautiful. And it's interesting because when I was doing sex work before, I didn't like my body. I wasn't okay with my body. I
Right.
was very much in my eating disorder then, and it wasn't even related to gender at that point. But I guess everything kind of came together for me with it. Once I found recovery, I started to appreciate my curves and love my breasts and appreciate my vagina, and it's been really cool. So I'm excited to use my body again for sex work.
Yeah, I wonder
I'm
what it's going
excited
to
to
be like
explore it.
now. Yeah, like in this, you're in a new place with yourself with that,
Yeah,
aren't you?
yeah,
So, yeah, that sounds really gorgeous. And I feel like that is so beautiful and worth celebrating because for me, okay, as a cis 50-year-old woman, I'm like, I've got a way to go on that. I've been so conditioned to police my body in a certain way and to, all that stuff's ingrained in me. It's very multi-layered, I find, because like in my rational brain, I'm like, yeah, I'm a feminist and I can be whatever fucking shape I want. And you can't tell me this or that. And like, fuck you.
Yeah,
But at the same time, we do look in the mirror and then like, oh, you notice things and oh, that's not quite how it should be. And that's not how I want it to be. And it's like, it's all rooted in misogyny, but it's there, it's a part of me, and I am healing from that myself, and it's like I would love to be in that place of like I really completely like love and accept my body. I would love to be there. I'm not there yet, but that's my aim though. That is my aim.
I wouldn't say
Yeah.
I'm fully there yet either. I
Yeah.
still struggle to look in the mirror at times. I don't know that judgment on your body ever fully goes away. I don't know that it does. I
Yeah, because
think you
it's
just
such
find
an
ways.
yeah, to work around it, because I guess you can set up a trap for yourself, can't you? It's like you have this maybe impossible goal to get to, which is maybe just the other side of that coin, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
that perfection, that vision of how a woman, quote unquote, should be in society.
yeah.
Um, and then you can maybe use this, like, oh, I want to completely accept myself for who I am, as another impossible goal, I guess. So I think it's just like you do whatever you like, work towards it by all means. But then, yeah, you're going to have good days and bad days, I suppose, aren't you? And like but the
Absolutely.
more you accept, like the more, I think it's a soothing of that and an easing of those feelings of rejection and self, criticism and stuff like that. I think that's where the victories are, aren't they? For me, I find. Yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult. I mean, to recover from my eating disorder itself, I mean, I had to go through intensive treatment for months. And even then, I still relapsed quite a few times on my way. I don't think that those judgments on your body ever fully leave.
Hmm.
I don't think they do. I think you just come to a place where you can find some appreciation for your body sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always, but
Yeah.
sometimes. And that's where pole dance really helped me with loving my body, and it was such a beautiful journey to start dancing again. And because I used to dance, not pole, but I used to dance, years ago, and I stopped because of depression and my body and everything. And so
Hmm.
getting back to dance was just this beautiful, gorgeous journey of
Hmm.
acknowledging my body again.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Just celebrate every moment of feeling good about your body, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, one thing I just realized that I wanted to come back to. We talked about a little bit before we started recording about autism and disability and how you consider autism for yourself to be a disability. And I found that interesting because I know some people do and some people don't. So yeah, I would love to hear more about, why that is and how you see all that for yourself.
Yeah. I think people think disability and disabled is like a bad word.
Mm,
And they see it as something scary and wrong and othering.
mm-hmm,
And I've kind of come to this place where I've reclaimed it for myself. I
mm-hmm,
do consider myself disabled, related to being autistic and having mental illness.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I think for me, what it means is that I operate in a way that society has not built. Meaning, I I work differently. My body works differently. My brain works differently than, I guess, not the norm, because I don't think the norm is not disabled. I think then society's expectations of how someone should operate. If you break down the word disabled, that
mm-hmm,
that can get upsetting to me even sometimes. Like, the idea that I'm not able or not capable of things. But
yeah.
I kind of, I guess, reclaim it in the way that I'm not capable of living in this society the way it was constructed for people who are not disabled.
Mm, yeah. I really like that description. That's so good. I love that
Yeah. I
perspective.
I I
Yeah.
don't think about it much, but when I do, I'm like, I'm not able to live in society the way it is and fully meet everyone's expectations. I operate
Hmm.
differently. I am fully capable of doing things, I just do them differently.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, with the word disabled as well? Because I think we can get very, or like, I guess people who are not disabled, especially, we can get all like, oh my God, what is peace? Is it okay to say this thing? And I think for a while, or like a little while ago, I was like, what do I say? How do I say this? And I think I once used the term differently abled. And
Mhm.
and I've actually just read it in a book that I bought, the term differently abled. And it made me think back to when I did that. And a disabled person actually said to me, look, don't bullshit about differently abled. I'm disabled. It's not a bad word.
Yeah.
It's disabled. I'm disabled. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
differently abled is
okay,
almost
thank
like a
you.
euphemism.
Yeah, and it's like, thank you for letting me know this, and then I was like, cool, I've learned something. That's great. So yeah, hashtag intersectional, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was really good. But then it's interesting to now see that in other books and stuff, and I wonder what people make of it. I think people trying to be. It's kind of good to be careful, I suppose, but also I think sometimes you can be so careful that you still end up offending people. It's interesting,
Yeah,
isn't
I
it?
mean, I guess what I would say about that is ask questions.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
also, everyone who may fall under the umbrella of disabled sees it differently.
totally.
We're not all one entity, we're
Hmm.
unique humans with unique experiences and unique language.
Yeah.
Um, I say I'm disabled, I say I'm autistic, but other people approach it differently. And
Hmm.
there is not one right or wrong answer. It's whatever works for each person. So
Hmm.
I always advise just ask questions and ask them respectfully. And we're happy to answer. Like, we would
Hmm.
rather ask questions than have judgments or assumptions made about us.
Totally. Yeah.
And even I, before I reclaimed disability or
Hmm.
disabled, I used to use words like differently abled or
Yeah.
special needs, or,
Yeah.
one of my biggest pet peeves, especially as someone who came from a background in education, is the phrase special needs and special education. I
Hmm.
take so many issues with those words. Uh,
Yeah.
oh gosh, don't even get me started.
Mm.
It's a whole other episode.
Yeah. Well, you live, you learn, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
used to think those words were I
Yeah.
used to, back in the day, I used to engage in the R slur. You grow, you learn, you change, and I think it's
Mm.
important to recognize that we all come from, a less informed place. But that doesn't mean
Totally.
we can't try harder now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when you know better, you can do better, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't talked about yet?
Probably a billion and one things.
I would expect so.
um,
Yeah.
I don't think we have 10 years to talk, so
Yeah,
I
we'd have to
I
do a
feel really
series.
great about
But
our discussion today.
good, good. I'm glad. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me and
Yay.
and showing interest in my experiences.
Mm,
That's really special to me. And at some
awesome.
point, I would love to start my own podcast. Who knows when that'll
Mm.
hit the ground? But
Yeah, yeah. I think that would suit you, like the way you speak and everything. I think that'd be really cool.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I I always joke that I'm the social type of autistic. Um, there's there's different kinds. I'm the extremely social one. I thrive off of talking. So,
that's interesting. Yeah, I absolutely do not, but and also like introvert. So the thing is like cuz the conversation I've been having with people, I've been mostly like, assuming a listening position, which is a place I'm really comfortable in. But
yeah,
also I feel like I have opened up more over time, and shared more of myself and about myself.
I
So
love
that's been a
that.
journey, and like reclaiming my own voice and stuff as part of this whole deconditioning, of all the patriarchal nonsense, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
that's
yeah,
powerful.
mm, yeah, it is. Little way to go
Well, if I
yet,
can ever
but
help you on your journey, let me know.
thank you. Awesome. I feel like, yeah, I need all the help I can get, really. We all do, to be honest, I feel. Um,
Everyone needs help. Anyone who
mhm.
says they don't is in
In
denial or
denial.
has had too much trauma.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, cool. I guess we'll leave it there. Um,
Thank you, Esther.
nice. Thank you so much. You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/Finley, which is FINLEY, where you can also read the transcript. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com, on social media, and on YouTube. Again, if you'd like to support us, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender. You can also buy us a coffee or make a donation. Links are on the website. Remember to register your interest for our upcoming allyship course. Go to 50shadesofgender.com/allyship-course or navigate to the course page via the website menu to be notified when it goes live. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open-minded.
What did all mean? So sorry.
Don't
I should have
worry,
put a
it's
sign
fine.
on the door, not disturb. Um